Before we dive into our story, if you love interesting and immersive stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like this video. Your support helps us keep creating amazing content. Let's get started. The Calloway family had spent the last year living out of suitcases, traveling from one city to another, their days dictated by business meetings, corporate events, and the demands of Michael Calloway's high-profile career. As a successful entrepreneur and former two-term mayor, though he rarely mentioned that part, Michael had taken on an international consulting project that required him to relocate his entire family overseas for 12 months. His wife, Emma, and their two daughters, Lily and Sophie, had adapted to the nomadic lifestyle, but there was never a moment when they didn't long for the comfort of home. They missed the warmth of their small town, the peacefulness of their backyard, the smell of fresh cut grass on a summer evening. So, as their SUV turned the final corner onto their street, they were ready to embrace the familiar. But instead of the quiet, sprawling property they had left behind, they were met with a scene so surreal, so utterly incomprehensible, that for a moment they thought they had taken a wrong turn. Towering fences, thick and industrial, stretched across their once open backyard, enclosing what could only be described as a makeshift zoo. Inside the pens, elephants swayed uneasily, their massive frames confined in far too small spaces, their eyes vacant and tired. Lions prowled behind reinforced metal bars, their restless movements betraying their distress. Hippos wallowed in a murky, algae-infested pool, the water too shallow for their comfort. Giraffes craned their necks toward trees that had been stripped bare, their hungry eyes scanning for food that wasn't there. The entire area had been transformed into a gaudy, artificial-looking wildlife park, complete with oversized banners that read, "Welcome to the Sycamore Heights Wildlife Experience." The air reeked of animal waste, sweat, and something Michael could only describe as pure negligence. Michael slammed on the brakes so suddenly that the seatbelts locked into place. Emma let out a strangled gasp, her hand flying to her mouth, while their daughters sat wide-eyed in the back seat, their young minds struggling to process what they were seeing. For a long moment, there was only silence. Thick, suffocating, disbelief-laden silence. Then, before Michael could even unbuckle his seatbelt, a voice rang out, smooth, calculating, dripping with self-satisfaction. "Ah, the Calloway family, welcome back. I must say, you've arrived just in time to witness the grand success of our community's latest project." Standing near the entrance, dressed in a pristine, white pantsuit that practically radiated arrogance, was Margaret Dawson, the HOA president. Her lips curled into a smug smile as she surveyed their expressions, her arms crossed in satisfaction. Michael had never particularly liked Margaret. She was the kind of woman who enjoyed power for the sake of it, wielding her position as if she were some kind of monarch. But this was beyond anything he had imagined. Slowly, he stepped out of the car, his expression dark and unreadable. His voice was dangerously low when he finally spoke. "Margaret, what the is this?" Margaret let out a light, almost dismissive laugh, tilting her head as if speaking to a child who simply didn't understand the world. "Oh, Michael, I know this must be quite the surprise, but allow me to explain. You see, while you were away, the HOA identified this land as underutilized. And given our town's growing need for attractions that would stimulate economic growth, we took the liberty of transforming your property into something truly spectacular." She spread her arms wide, gesturing toward the enclosures. "A wildlife sanctuary, the first of its kind in Sycamore Heights, and the community has embraced it wonderfully." Emma stepped forward, her voice shaking with barely restrained fury. "This is our land," she snapped. "You had no right to do this." Margaret sighed as if she were dealing with a particularly slow-witted customer. "Emma, dear, I'm afraid that's where you're mistaken. This land is no longer yours. You see, during your absence, the HOA reclassified it for community development. The necessary paperwork has already been processed, permits approved. There's really nothing you can do now. But don't worry, you still have your house. We didn't take that. You're more than welcome to continue living there. Michael's fists clenched at his sides. They weren't just trying to steal their land, they were treating them like guests in their own home. For weeks, Michael and Emma fought relentlessly. They filed complaints, hired lawyers, scheduled meetings with city officials, but every effort was met with dead ends. The HOA had done more than steal their land. They had manipulated local government, bribed officials, and ensured that any legal opposition would be crushed before it even began. Every time the Callaways tried to fight back, Margaret retaliated. First, they cut the power to the house. When Michael confronted them, the HOA claimed that due to the high energy demand of the wildlife park, their home had been deemed a low priority zone. Then, they started issuing ridiculous fines. One day it was for unauthorized landscaping, because their grass was half an inch too high. The next, it was for excessive noise pollution, when their daughters laughed too loudly in the backyard. Finally, the final blow arrived, an official notice from the HOA, Notice of Expansion. The Sycamore Heights wildlife experience is growing. To best serve the community, additional land is required. Your residents may be included in this expansion. Emma clutched the paper in her hands, her breathing uneven. They're trying to take the house. Michael took the letter from her gently, reading it over with cold, calculating precision. Then, without a word, he picked up his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. It was time to remind this town exactly who he was. Margaret thrived on control. She loved the town hall meetings, the attention, the illusion of power she had carefully built over the years. So when she stood before the packed community center that evening, she expected yet another victory. What she didn't expect was Michael Calloway taking the floor. Margaret's smirk faltered as Michael calmly walked up to the microphone, his voice even, commanding. My name is Michael Calloway. For 2 terms, I was your mayor. The entire room fell into stunned silence. Then, chaos. People gasped, whispered, turned to each other in disbelief. Margaret's confidence shattered. Michael held up a stack of documents. This is proof that the HOA stole my land. This is proof that every dollar from the so-called wildlife sanctuary has gone straight into Margaret Dawson's personal accounts. Margaret stammered, floundered, desperately tried to regain control, but the crowd was turning on her. Shouts of liar, thief, you stole from us, filled the air. By the end of the night, Margaret was forced to resign in disgrace. Emma was elected the new HOA president. Her first act, shutting down the wildlife park. The animals were transported back to their natural habitats. The land was restored, and in its place, Michael funded a state-of-the-art community park and sports complex, free for everyone. As he watched his daughters laugh and run across the new playground, Emma smiled at him. You could have just taken back the land and left it empty. Michael smirked. I could have, but I'd rather give them something worth fighting for. And that's another unbelievable story from the world of HOAs. What do you think? Was justice served, or should things have ended differently? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another crazy tale. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.